Welcome to Not All There with Chad Johnson. Wait, with Chad Johnson? I'm not ready for this.
I am joined today by Leonard Buschel, who is the editor and operator of the Addiction Recovery E-Bulletin. And he's also a published author of Hi, Cannabis to Clarity. Leonard, thank you so much for coming in. There it is, your
Hey,
picture.
Chad, it's nice to be here with you.
I really appreciate it. You and I have talked a few times over the phone and text message over the past year and a half. So it's really nice to actually
Well,
be talking face to face. So thanks so much for coming on.
I might be a bigger fan of yours than you are of me.
Oh,
But
well, thank you very much.
I admire your 3 websites and the work you do with a lot of individuals who are struggling or suffering with addiction, which is such a huge problem or issue. It's a phenomena in America.
It really is. That is an excellent way of putting it. And, for all the conversations with all the people that I've had, no one's ever quite described it as a phenomenon. And here in the States, and it is. And I think we're sort of at this, I wouldn't call it an inflection point, but we're certainly at a moment where we need as many voices out there as we can for people to find resources that are available to them. There are resources that are shrinking. There's a glut of people that need help and a lack of resources that are available. So it to me becomes more and more important that we have a community base. We have people out there that they're speaking and writing books and publishing e-bulletins and making podcasts that can get as much information and word out to people so that they can feel seen and heard and hopefully brave enough to go and make the changes that they need. What you got some fun stuff in that book. So give me a little rundown of who Leonard was prior to the lifestyle that you were leading.
Who Leonard was prior to the life I'm living now?
Or before what? So you were
Yeah,
basically what I like
I
to
grew
call
up
is like,
in Philadelphia. I grew
yeah,
up in
okay.
Philadelphia, okay? And there's a sign that says out on the freeway heading to Philadelphia, enter at your own risk. Okay? That's where I grew up.
Okay.
I grew up in a neighborhood, row homes. There were no divorces. No one ever moved off the block. It was, we knew everybody. I went to the same elementary school, junior high school as everyone else. So it was a very stable neighborhood in that regard. And it was interesting. There was a lot of, I was thinking earlier this morning, actually, that I don't often talk about how much getting sober pr- saved me from going down the tubes as a compulsive gambler.
Mm,
Compulsive gambler at a very young age. I lived in the kind of neighborhood where if we were at a luncheonette and it started to rain, we would bet on which drop of rain hit the bottom first.
oh my gosh.
Okay. At
Yeah.
the Super Bowl, we would bet on the
Yeah.
coin course at the toss at the beginning before we even bet on the game. And I remember once I was in junior high school and it was lunchtime. I was outside. Friends of mine pulled up and I said, "Where are you going?" They said to me, "We're going to Golden Gate Park. It's a racetrack. You want to go?" And I said, "Of course I want to go." And I just left school to go to the racetrack because that was way more interesting than the rest of the school day. And I think what we called it was being in action. You always wanted to be in action, which is another form of, I'm not going to say addiction, but distraction from daily life, which
Yeah.
can be fairly mundane and boring, unless you have something in there to make
Exactly.
it more interesting. And since I didn't smoke cigarettes, I gambled
Well,
and loved it.
oh, that's why I don't gamble. Is that, I've done enough and to know that it's best that I just stay away from this. I'll play for fun. Like I'll play cards for fun or maybe, do a fantasy football thing for fun, but I do know enough about myself that that is something that I need to stay away from because it's that action, it's that juice, it fills that void that we're looking to fill. And, being mundane, life can be mundane. And that for people like us is very challenging. And so you were hitting the tracks, you were growing up in Philadelphia. What led you into becoming a weed dealer, more or less?
Uh, well, let me just say one other story about
Yeah,
gambling.
please.
The first time I went to Las Vegas,
Mm.
I ended up, after 4 days, calling my mother to wire me money for airfare to get home because I had lost all my money. And I assumed that happened to everybody who went to Las Vegas every time they went. But that wasn't true. It was just me who just had to play it all out. So I think it was a guy named Matt. He asked me to get him some weed, and I bought enough for myself and enough for him, and there was some money left over. And I thought, oh look, I have money to go to a rock concert now. And I did it again the next week, and then it seemed like it just became a thing. I remember telling my mother, I said, "Ma, I know what I want to do." She said, "What?" I said, "I want to be a drug dealer." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because you can do it all the time. You never get bored, and you have a stash, perpetually, a perpetual stash. I
Yeah.
never cocaine for 13 years, every single day.
Mm.
I never ran out. I never ran out. But I was only a cocaine addict for the last year, because for the first 12 years, every time I did a line or a spoon, I did it because I wanted to.
Right.
And to me, being an addict means doing something you
Because you
don't
need
want
to.
to do.
Or-
Otherwise, you're just using.
Right.
And it was that 13th year that I'd wake up and say, I'm not going to get high until after dinner. And I'd get high after lunch. Or I'm not going to get high this weekend. And of course, Friday after lunch, I'd be getting high. And that scared me, to think like, "Oh, fuck, I have lost control." It's like, I used to be the puppeteer controlling the weed and the pills and the Valiums, and now I was the puppet, and the cocaine addiction was controlling me. Thank God, and luckily, I've realized I could snort ecstasy, and so that got me off of cocaine, that I could snort ecstasy, and I think we just had an article on the Addiction Recovery e-bulletin about how heroin helped somebody get off of, uh, I'm conferring with my assistant here, Jenner. What was the article about? Somebody, how heroin helped somebody get off of
Oh, it was, Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday or
Oh, Billy
Billy
Holiday?
Idol?
Oh, Billy Idol.
And
The Idler.
Billy Idol used what to get off what? We'll look it up for you. Anyways, but it's interesting what people use to get off other things.
It is, and that's, now,
Used
of course.
crack. Annoying it. Billy Idol used crack to get off heroin.
Oh, hey,
Okay?
you know, whatever it takes, man, by
So I
hook or
used it. I
crook, I
used
guess.
snorting it. I was just I loved snorting things, so I started snorting ecstasy, and that helped me completely get off cocaine. I didn't get sober until 5 years after that, but
Yeah.
I did get off cocaine successfully.
I loved cocaine and I loved ecstasy. I never thought about snorting ecstasy though, but I would snort cocaine and take ecstasy. So,
Well,
but
I had really good ecstasy from the guy
okay.
up in the Bay Area who
Yeah.
originally made it.
Oh, well, then there you go. Right. You were the man, you
Yeah.
were connected. So how well known were you up and down the West Coast then while you were out there doing
Nobody knew me. That's the point of being a drug dealer. Nobody knows you. No one knew me other than other drug dealers. No matter where I went, no one said, "Oh, he's a drug dealer," unless they were another drug dealer. And the reason I consider myself one of the most successful drug dealers in the history of America is because I never got caught.
How
I
many years
never
were you doing it?
I never went to do time. What's that?
How many years were you doing it for? The dealing.
Oh, just 23.
Oh, just 23. Just
2 decades and 3 years. 23 years is my only source of income for those 23 years. And it was mostly weed and coke.
So
It
did you
was,
did
it
you
was
start on the
so
East Coast and move out west, or was it just you migrated west and that's where it
I
all started?
started in Philadelphia and I moved to California when I realized I knew enough dealers in Northern California to be able to make a living. So I moved out in 1980 after my son was born. Yes, and never looked back. Although I say Philadelphia is a great place to be from.
Yeah,
Really,
that's
really
that's
great.
that
But
that's how I talk about my hometown. It's a great place to be from. It's beautiful
mhm,
and it's a nice place to be from.
yeah.
So what led you to getting sober? How did that go down? I'm curious because it sounds like you were in the thick of it.
uh, it was a miraculous series of events. I woke up one morning with the worst hangover I'd ever had. Literally, like beyond a headache. Like I was thinking of calling 911 because I was so sick. But I managed to get to my first appointment that day, which was in a little town in Northern California called Fairfax. Uh, and I had an appointment for a massage at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I got there, and 5 minutes into the massage, I say, "Excuse me," Penny was her name, and I had to go outside and throw up. And I went outside and I threw up. And then I came back in, another 5 or 10 minutes of a massage. I said, "Penny, I can't do this. I'm too sick. I gotta go outside and throw up again." And I started thinking, what's wrong with this picture? I can't even lay through a massage. Uh, and I thought, this is not why I moved to California. And so I left her and I stopped at a phone booth where I spent a lot of time. And while I'm at the phone booth, the only woman on the earth who had gone to a rehab started to walk by me. She saw me. She came over and said, "Lee," that was my name. That's my middle name. "Lee, how you doing?" And I thought, not bad, because I hadn't thrown up for 15 minutes. So I'm thinking,
Hey,
I said, "Well,
I'm
you don't
good.
look good." This was July. She says, "You don't look good." And meanwhile, the sweat is flying off my forehead and hitting her.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And she said, "Well, you don't look so good." And then we talked. I said, "By the way, did that rehab you went to have an 800 number?" Because I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, you were at a payphone. You
on
don't
a
get paid.
phone call.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah." She said, "I don't have it with me, but I will call you and give it to you." So I went home and there was someone taking a picture of my house. And someone I did not know, and a stranger taking a picture of my house. And I thought, that's the cops, because I knew someone who had just gotten busted, and he used to come to my house to buy Hawaiian weed
Mm.
often. And I thought they were going to show him a picture of the house and say, "Can you identify this as where you went to score?" He would say yes. They would come back and arrest me. So I saw the guy taking a picture of my house. He left. I ran in the house. I packed up everything, well, not everything, but just enough to go. And I went to Big Sur, California.
Mm.
From the payphone there, I called the 800 number, and it happened to be the Betty Ford Center. And I didn't know. I thought I was just having a conversation with the woman, but I've learned since then that it's actually called an intake.
Intake. Yeah, yeah.
And they're asking me all the questions. And then at the end, they said, "Well, we'll accept you. We'll take you." And I had never had a DUI or anything. And I thought, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." But I never mentioned marijuana. I never mentioned weed to them. I just talked about the coke and the drinking and the pills, because I couldn't leave the house without a Valium and a Percodan and a flask of tequila, because I didn't never know, or mushrooms, because I never know if I would run into a hippie or not. So I had to have my vest of
Your
ammunition
accoutrement.
to go. And they said, "We'll take you." And then at the end they said, how will you pay for this?" I said, "Well, I have some insurance because my mother got me on a family policy at the camera store she worked in, because the guy had had an affair with her, so he felt guilty, so he put the whole family on her insurance policy." I said, "Well, I do have some insurance." She said, well, give me the numbers, and if we don't take it, we'll find you a hospital that will. I said, are you fucking kidding me? I'm not going to no hospital. I just need some R&R.
Yeah. Right.
She said, okay, well, the next day at the bar at a restaurant in Big Sur called Ventana, she called me on my cell phone, and I had one of those big early
The
cell
big brick
phones.
ones. Yeah. Right.
And she called me and said, uh, we ran your numbers and we'll take you, it's there, no fee whatsoever.
Oh my God.
And I started crying
Mm.
because I realized the jig was up.
Yeah.
They had a check-in date, and it was August 3rd, 1994. And that summer, my son, who I was raising at the time, was with his mother for the summer. So I thought, I have no excuse not to go. And I started weeping because I just knew that something was happening. And the guy I was sitting with started laughing. He said, "You don't need to go. You're not an alcoholic. You smoke pot every day and you
So
do
what?
lines of ecstasy. You don't need it." And I said, "Well, it's free. I have to go." And on August 3rd, 1994, I was at a friend's house in Studio City, California. I said, "I have 2 joints. One for the ride there, one for the ride home." And he said, "Give me the second one. It'll still be here when you get back." I said, "Okay, fine." And then on the way there, I was planning to stop for a drink.
Mhm. Sure.
Uh, I liked margaritas or Bloody Marys were my favorite. I couldn't go. I love them, but I was late. I got lost, and I was late. And I'm a people pleaser, and I didn't want to miss my 3 to 4 PM check-in, so I never had a last drink. And I got there, and I I go up to the front desk, I said, "Is this where I check in?" She said, "Check in? It's not a hotel, this is where you get admitted." It's okay. You're gonna hit me with the semantics right away.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I started talking to someone, and I said, "They're not gonna brainwash me here, are they?" They said, "Oh, no, 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 no." And then some guy comes out and hands me a big book, and the way it sounded, let me see if I have one here. Where is it? I know I have one here. Uh, it's like the thump
Yeah.
in my palm. I thought, "That's either the Bible or Mein Kampf." It had that kind
It
of
had that weight behind it. Yeah.
gravitas,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
No,
I thought, "Oh,
that's
shit."
I had the same thing when somebody handed me my first big book. It I don't know, man. It has a certain like physical weight to it, but also just
It's
the emotion behind it, the
mhm.
significance and symbolism behind it is like, holy shit, what is this thing? Yeah.
I still have mine. It's hiding behind my shameless advertisement here for my book.
My
But I have
my
the
yeah,
original, and
mine's
of
right under here.
course I
Yeah.
had it signed, when you leave, everybody
Oh,
signs it.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I saw the steps, they had them engraved on the wall in marble. And I kept saying, "God this, God
Yeah.
that, God that." And the first phone call I was able to make, I called my brother and I said, "I don't think I can stay here." And he said, "Well, look, you went to the Wailing Wall in Israel. You went to Zen monasteries in Kyoto, Japan. Just stick with it a little longer. Give it another couple days."
Yeah.
Okay. The next morning, I walk out of the hall, and I felt something physical, as if a hand had reached down through my body to my feet and extracted all desire for drugs in me. And I knew at that moment I would never get high again.
Yeah.
It was
It's really
like
weird.
divine intervention.
Yeah.
And I know the Japanese have an expression, at its extreme, everything turns to its opposite.
It's so true. That's there you go, man. That's
And
that's
I
it.
was, and I was done.
Yeah.
I noticed that old expression struck sober. It was literally divine intervention. And my heart goes out to people who still have cravings, who
I know.
have relapses and
Yeah.
slips. And fortunately, no matter what, I don't want to be high. I love not being high
Hey,
now.
and that's what happened to me too. I was a one and done. I got
Mhm.
into a room
You-
and I didn't go to rehab, but
Right,
I tried to get sober on my own and I relapsed on some pills and I ended up going to a meeting and within that meeting, that's where that hit me. It was like all of a sudden it was just like, oh
right,
fuck, I don't have to do this ever
right.
again. And of course, early on you have to battle through these old whatever cravings, habits, what have you.
Mhm.
But once you kind of put in the time and a lot of that hard work and you get clear of that, like it call it whatever you want, but it's true. When that obsession leaves you, it is very magical is the only spiritual, magical, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. It is an actual emotional sensation that you have. And I just feel very lucky and blessed that, I got that and I haven't had to battle what a lot of other people have and sadly, and a lot of my friend not a lot of my friends, but enough people in my life couldn't make it back from that. And we're a couple of the lucky ones.
I use that, your story, when I discuss people. In fact, on my newsletter, I have a person of the week
Yeah.
feature, and I ask them, do you think addiction is a disease, illness, or just a twisted finger of fate? Because
Great
I don't
question.
think it's a disease, and your story proves it's not a disease. Because how many diseases go into remission just by walking into a room with other people who have beat the problem? In
You
England,
know,
they call it an illness. It's definitely an illness,
yeah, they do.
definitely an addiction, but it's not a disease because if you go to, it, because like I said, you can get healed just by walking into a room with like-minded souls.
And that is very it's very accurate and poignant. I've never been posed that question or have it been posed in that way. And now that we sort of are hashing this out, it's like, yeah, I would agree with that. Is that it's an addiction, it's an illness, because I was able to remove whatever it was in my life that was driving me toward, wanting to drink or get high. And I will say though, for me to get to that point, it required a fuck ton of work internally, externally, conversations, honesty,
Mhm.
humility. I mean, it ain't easy. It is not easy. That said, you and I are sitting here talking about how beautiful life is and that you can get there. You can find it. It does exist no matter what's going on around you. It is there in front of you. It's just a matter of if you're willing to take yourself there. And that is where like the community and connection, your book, the bulletin, these podcasts, that's a resource that's available for people to hopefully connect with in some way, and it can give them that push, that bravery that it takes to put in that effort, because if you do, life is fucking tremendous.
Ironically, all the desire for drugs left me, but not drinking,
Mm,
not alcohol.
interesting.
I wasn't an alcoholic, so that whatever that energy was sort of
Yeah,
left that out. And luckily, I went to a meeting when I first got out, and I went to my first meeting. Somebody was sharing about how they had heard the Dalai Lama say the most spiritual thing happening in America was AA. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds good to me. I'll go to another meeting. And then I realized that alcohol is a drug, and I am a drug addict. So I haven't fucked with that first drink yet, and hopefully never will. Uh, but look, it's a liquid drug.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
knew I was a drug addict, so I don't, and it kept me going to meetings. And right now I'm in the middle of writing an essay thanking AA for allowing me to attend meetings for the last 30 years.
You know, you can say whatever you like about certain aspects of the recovery business industry, what have you. But you know, I got sober through AA and I maintain a certain lifestyle because of what I learned in AA. But for me, there's so much more beyond it. But boy, does it give you what you need to start working your life and walking down that path and allowing yourself the strength and confidence to grow. And people think spirituality automatically hitches its wagon to religion or a white bearded fella in the sky or what have you, and it's like no, 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 no. Spirituality is, it's something internal, and it's a connection that you can feel amongst other people. That's where the spirituality in my life comes from. It's what's outside of me, whether it's other people or the world, the nature out around me. To me, that's what spirituality is, and and by extension, it links into community,
Mm.
and community is a huge factor of recovery for people.
When people say to me, "What is AA?" I say, "It's this. It's the St. Francis prayer."
Yeah, there you go.
Basically, the whole program can be summed up in the St. Francis prayer, and I wish we would say it more often at more meetings.
I
I
agree.
go to one meeting a week. It's a quote unquote meditation meeting in a park, and we someone there says the St. Francis prayer every week. It's fantastic. This is a picture
Is
of
that
me.
you?
You recognize me?
Sure.
When I
Uh,
when I was when I was 20 years old, and the reason I speak as the uh, most grateful marijuana addict of all time. When I was 20 years old, I was going to college in Philadelphia, and we couldn't get any hash. And we didn't have marijuana because at that time it was Mexican
yeah.
stinkweed,
The brown
but
frown.
hashish from Afghanistan and Pakistan and Lebanese red hash. There wasn't any all on the East Coast. Everybody I knew in New York and Philadelphia, nobody had any hashish. And my friend says, "Well, Lebanon is right next to Israel. I bet there's some camels coming over the border with hashish for the tourists." I said, "Well, it's certainly for the tourists because if they got caught selling it to the soldiers, they would get us executed.
Oh
Because
yeah.
God forbid an Israeli soldier would get high and miss the Palestinian he was shooting at." So I knew it was for the tourists and for the people living on the kibbutz. And we dropped out of college.
Oh shit.
And we flew on the longest nonstop flight at that time from Kennedy to Tel Aviv. It was like 12 hours. And we scored hashish to bring back to Philadelphia. And
How did you
our
bring it?
family, and we told our families we're going to, and they thought, "Oh, you're going to
To
learn
the
about the."
motherland and get a kibbutz,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, you
No, we
bet.
were just going for our stash. So
It's-
literally for our stash. And I remember the last night buying girdles because to stick the bricks in. Those were the bricks. They're 200 grams per brick, and flying into Kennedy the next day, I leaned over to look out the window and I smelled it coming up from my friends. But we had talcum powder. We had talcum powder. Talcum powder. Don't let the talcum powder fall out while you're going through customs. It was quite a scene, and we got back and we were very happy, and we were like heroes. Oh my God, they have the hashish. And I remember selling my last quarter ounce. I was at a friend's house in a neighborhood called Kensington and Allegheny. It's very famous now, Kensington and Allegheny in Philadelphia. Uh, we're in the basement. I got my last quarter ounce, and the guys who were there to buy it, they look at it and they said, "Okay." One brings out a revolver puts it at my head. The other brings out an automatic weapon, puts it at my heart, and they said, "Thank you. Now go."
You bet.
And I'm looking at the revolver and I see the bullets. So I know they're serious. I can see the bullets in the revolver. And they walked me out to my car. They took the $200 I had in my pocket. They walked me out to my car. And I got in, I was driving away. And I thought to myself, I am never dealing in this neighborhood again. And I never did.
But just that it was only the neighborhood, not that you're going to stop dealing. It's just like this place
Right.
is
No,
bad
that
for
never occurred
business.
to me. That never occurred to me. And if you look up if you Google Kensington and Allegheny, you'll understand why
Fair
it
enough.
was a suppression thing. So this is the book
Yeah.
I wrote.
Tell us about the book.
It's all into it. It's about a lot of things. There's a lot of humor, a lot of sex, and ultimately about how my goal now is to help people who are middle aged, who are still smoking pot after 20 years. They didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
It's like Alan Watts said about LSD. When you get the message, hang up the phone.
Hang up the phone. That's
You're not
right.
still getting high after 20 years. If you're 50, if you're 60, you're just not going through withdrawals. And you're not really getting high anymore. You're just
No.
not going through withdrawals. And it's a beautiful thing. And when people I know who at 65 stop smoking, it's like there's a rainbow suddenly. They see
Absolutely.
things more clearly than they ever could, even when pot does help you focus the first 5, 10, 15 years. Music does sound better. I don't deny any of that.
Mm.
But after a while, it's diminishing returns. It's not
Yeah.
working anymore, but you're still hooked on it because
You sleep better, you think clearer, you feel better all the way around. Yeah, absolutely. Well, where can people find the book? How can they
This book,
purchase it?
actually, I put it on Substack for free.
Okay.
You can read it all there.
I'll put
Amazon. Hi, from Cannabis to Clarity, Leonard Lee Buschel, and Substack. So Leonard Lee Buschel on Substack.
I'll put a
You
link
can
in
see
the
it
I'll put a
all.
link in the show notes
I
for
have
the
a
Substack.
fairly active Facebook page, which I can post it again. It's got 21 chapters. They're all pretty interesting. It's very compelling because it's funny and it's sexy.
I
Okay,
mean,
I don't
that's what
hold
sells.
I don't hold back.
You
And
know, and good for you because you and I are cut of the same cloth. That's why I get out and tell everything about myself because that's what draws people in. You know, they love they love the tawdriness. They
well,
that's you know
I take that rigorously honest thing as part of the program very seriously.
so do I. Some say maybe too far, but that's okay.
Well,
It's
there is there is that expression honest to a fault.
yeah, I'm
I'm
working.
not honest to a fault. I'm just honest. And I think having a good sense of humor is something else so you can find in AA.
Oh, it
Meetings I go to, people share, and if they're not funny at the end, people don't clap.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's so true. I mean, humor is a huge part of my recovery life. Like I gotta keep laughing and talk about the absurdity of everything that goes on around me, or I'm gonna be miserable. Also, addiction recovery e-bulletin. Tell me about it and where do people find it?
Been 13 years, every Tuesday morning. There's 22,000 subscribers. It's a correlation. It's an aggregation of the most interesting stories of the week about mental health, drugs, alcohol, recovery. It's a health oriented. It's fabulous.
It is.
There's a website,
Yeah.
addictionrecoveryebulletin.org. spelled just the way it sounds,
Just the way. Yeah,
ebulletin.org.
I'll link it up in the show notes. for
Changes
sure.
every week, which is why it's so popular. And it's a fascinating source of celebrity, sobriety, new science studies, all kinds of interesting things.
Oh, it's fascinating. I've been a longtime subscriber. So the fact that you and I are speaking, face to face, it's kind of cool. So check it out, everybody. Yes, the Addiction Recovery E-Bulletin. There will be a link in the show notes. I will have a link to Leonard's Substack and the Amazon link so you can purchase the book. And Leonard, this has been awesome. I really, really appreciate the
You
time.
too, Chad.
It's been
fun.
great. It's been a lot of fun. All right, everybody.
Okay.
Take care, Leonard. We'll talk real soon, okay?